She said, your mum put me up. She didn't know me particularly well. She let me live where she lived, and she let me stay there while I got back on my feet. I was stabbed in my back and in my leg and in my backside. So when I got to the hospital, they told me that the stab wound in my back was quite close to being in my spine. And my friend said to me, what are you going to be? You're going to be a gang member and a doctor. You're going to come out the GP service at the end of the day and get your hoodie on and come out and hang around with us. It doesn't make any sense.
Powerful words.
If I fight, I lose, even if I win.
Welcome to Our Lives, Our Stories with me, Chinn. And I'm really pleased today to say that I'm going to be having a chat with Casey Bailey, writer, performer, educator, but there's lots for us to discuss. Casey, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Carl. It's a pleasure.
We're going to talk about your work as a writer, particularly a poet, your educational work and your performance work. But let's start with, where did you grow up? Tell me a bit about your family background.
Yeah, so I grew up in Nechells in Birmingham. Very proud to be from Nechells in Birmingham. I've got 4 siblings. So I've got 2 brothers and 2 sisters. I'm down near the bottom, but I'm not the youngest. And yeah, we grew up in council house, middle of Birmingham. And I was blessed and lucky really to be raised by my mum and my dad in a house where there was love and there was care and there was chaos. But it was all good times.
Tell me a bit about your mum and dad.
So my mum, who is no longer with us, rest her soul. My mum's Irish lady called Christine. She was one of those people who, I was going to say nobody had a bad word to say about her. That's a lie, because I'm sure she's offended some people in her time. But she helped everyone.
Yeah.
So when somebody needed something, they'd show up at our house.
Yeah.
And with the best will in the world, my dad's a great man, but they weren't looking for my dad. They were looking for my mum.
Yeah.
And that could be kind of when I was late teens, that was 14, 13-year-olds showing up because they knew if they had a chat with my mum, she'd give them a couple of pounds. It could be people older than my mum who needed something for their own kids or for their own family. And kind of later in her life, my mum set up a business where she did print finishing. So kind of like folding and packing things. And kind of like at the height of that, there were 15, 20 women in Nechells who were pushing trolleys up and down the road with boxes in. They worked for my mum. My mum showed them how to do their taxes, how to make sure they were getting their allowance before they paid more than they needed to. She'd have them working in the house. She'd have all of us working sometimes. Yes. And she was a centre of our community, not just of our family. So yeah, my mum was a legend. She was an Irish lady who would sometimes cuss you in patois and confuse people. She'd say, come out of my yard. She said, that was my mum. But she grew up in Handsworth. She grew up around kind of like the times of, underground dance hall, shubs and blues raves. And that was where she came from. And that was what she knew. And I remember, like in school holidays, sometimes we'd be in like a factory before my mum started her business, and she'd be just putting pieces of metal together all day. Yeah. And it wasn't, there was no glamorous work. There was nothing about it that was going to make her rich or anything like that. But she was hardworking, she was dedicated, and she raised us with kind of morals and principles that you can't shake. And we'd never want to shake them, and I don't think we could.
When we look at success, too often it's through the prism of middle-class people saying you've got to make a lot of money, you've got to be prosperous, and then you cease to be working class if you do well. Yeah. Your mum was a working class success story.
100%. And I'll never forget, right, it's a really weird story. So I was teaching in Great Bar, and a woman came in, and I'd worked really closely with her daughter, and it was parents' evening. And then she came, and we started talking just about her daughter and how she was getting on. And she says, oh, my daughter said you're from Nechells. I says, yeah. She says, oh, I lived in Nechells for a little bit. I said, oh, okay. She says, yeah, I was out and I was struggling and blah, 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 blah. And I spent some time living with a woman called Christine. I said, really? She said, yeah, Christine Grassick. I said, that's my mum. And she said, your mum put me up. She didn't know me particularly well. She let me live where she lived. She said, other people weren't particularly happy about it. And she let me stay there while I got back on my feet. And I remember it was emotional because then she said, well, how's your mum? And I said, well, my mum's passed away, and she cried. Oh, because to her, she never knew this.
Yes.
So to me, this was like, this is something I'd become attuned with. But in her head, Christine was out there somewhere doing something. But But I knew that that's who my mum was.
Yeah.
And still now I'll randomly bump into people and it's like, oh yeah, your mum did this or your mum did that, or I'll never forget when your mum did that. And like my friends will talk about my mum at random.
Yeah.
So because she had that kind of impact in people's lives, a success.
That is
the impact we leave behind.
And the success was being a community person.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
What about your dad?
So my dad is a Jamaican man, so I'm that wonderful combination of Jamaican and Irish.
Yeah.
We don't want to pronounce the H after the T. And my dad, very hardworking man, a man full of like principles and morals.
Yes.
You know, in a time where I know a lot of my friends grew up without their father.
Yes.
For all kinds of different reasons, my dad was always there, was a constant in our lives. And my dad was a man who, when I think about my passion for writing and my passion for literature, that came from my dad. And that my dad would like quote just poetry just off the cuff, just start throwing out poetry. And like something I very rarely talk about these days because of Rudyard Kipling's like very tarnished legacy is my dad used to quote If by Rudyard Kipling like he wrote it himself. Yeah. And you'd be talking, you'd be like, oh dad, this happened and that happened. And like, if you can keep your head while all those around you are losing, like, what does this mean? And it was years until I started to grasp what all of that meant. But my dad would quote Shakespeare, he'd quote Kipling, he'd quote all kinds of just poetry and sayings, and he'd quote stuff from films. Like he always had a quote for a situation. So I remember a quote he used to love. So it's not a great literary quote. It's from the film with Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger, Twins.
Yes.
And my brother went out and he got into an argument and it ended up, getting into a fight or whatever. And my dad says, if at first you bluff, prepare to have your bluff called. And I was like, oh, what's that? Is that like Shakespeare or something? He's like, no, he put the film on. This Danny DeVito. But he always had a quote for the moment. He always had something to say. And my dad was, he was definitely the disciplinarian of the house. Both my parents were disciplinarians, I suppose, but my dad was definitely the disciplinarian, but he had a way of doing things. So you'd get in trouble at school on Friday and you kind of think it's blown over. And Saturday morning, my friends will knock the door. My dad said, just come and sit down. I want to talk to you about something. And I say to my friends, just go. It's going to be a lecture. I'm going to be here for an hour and a half. You just go. And he'd just talk and talk and talk. I'm just like... And some of that stuff at the time, so, oh, dad, like waffling on. And 10 years later, it made sense. Or 2 weeks later, I was like, that's what my dad was talking about. And still now in life, there are so many moments where I quote him, I reference him. I quote him as much as he quoted everybody else. He stole all the good quotes, that's why. And now I'll just be like, my dad used to say, my dad would say, just like, quote your dad, like, he said a lot of wise stuff. He said a lot of wise stuff. And so for me, as someone who, my dad and my mum didn't have formal qualifications, they didn't, go and get university education or anything like that, but they were smart people. Yeah. They had a great understanding of humanity, people, community. My dad was a person, I still hold this to this day, where people used to say, they used to have those adverts, like, is your neighbour a benefit cheat? And, dub your neighbour in because they're getting an extra £20. And my dad would be like, the people who are getting all the extra money are the ones making the adverts. Yeah. And they want you to tell everyone, they want you to tell everyone, oh, my neighbour's got an extra 20 quid. Yeah. Meanwhile, somebody over there's got an extra 20 million and no one cares. Yeah. And it was, and from young, before it was a popular thing to talk about, he was pointing out to me that they want us looking at each other and pulling each other down. And the reason why you haven't got anything is because the man next door with 5 kids living in a 3-bedroom house, he's got it all. He's got nothing either. And the people telling you he's got it all, they've got it all. Divided. 100%. And he was pointing that stuff out to me before I could even get anywhere near understanding it.
Another working class success story.
Absolutely.
An intelligent man who probably never had the opportunities to develop in a way that he would like to have gone, but then just worked and worked and worked. Yeah. But infused you with a love of words.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, to this day.
What was your dad's name?
My dad's name's Earl.
And he was from Jamaica itself?
My dad was born in Birmingham, but he's like been backwards and forwards, and then he spent some time in Manchester, some time in the Handsworth, but he grew up predominantly in Nechells. Yes. So my dad went to the school that I went to. My dad went to Duddeston Manor. I went to Heartlands High. Yeah.
Talk to me about your schooling. From St Matthews, was it, first of all?
I went to Cromwell.
You went to Cromwell?
Yeah, I do love St Matthews, though. But I went to Cromwell School, so just on the corner of Cromwell Street and Rocky Lane. And like I loved going to Cromwell School. I loved school in general. And I think because I got in lots of trouble in school, and often when I talk about school, I talk about the difficulties I had in school. People think like I had a negative relationship with school. Even though I had lots of bad stuff to deal with while I was at school, I loved school. I would never miss a day at school, oh my word. And yeah, Cromwell School, we used to have our little song, to Cromwell School we all belong. I could sing that word for word right now.
Come on, do it us.
I will. To Cromwell School we all belong, as one we're standing firm and strong. Let's raise our voices in a throng, together singing our school song. To this day, love that song.
Brilliant.
Yeah, Cromwell School was a great time. I met some people I'd be friends with for life. I met a teacher there. So my year 6 teacher was a woman called Poet Laureate. And I didn't realise it until years later. Poet Laureate was part of a group of black teachers who were being supported towards headship at a time when it was unheard of. And she went on to become the head teacher of St. Matthew's and to become... There are so many black teachers in the city who would not have reached the levels that and did what they did without Paula Osborne. To me, she was just Miss Osborne, who I was unfortunately terrorising throughout year 6 because I was a little bit of chaos in a bundle. But that was Cromwell School, and then I went off to Heartlands High, which had gives you a bit of an understanding of where we were at, that the school had recently had its name changed because someone had been killed outside the school. And then, as is often the case, we'll just change the name. We'll just call it a new thing, make a new uniform, and we'll move on. Didn't necessarily address any of the problems. But again, I loved going to Heartlands High School. And I often talk about teachers who I had negative relationships with at school. But at Heartlands High School, I met Mr. Richardson, who was my form tutor, who taught me what it meant to be a teacher, taught me what it meant to give kids a fresh start every single time. And he always gave me a fresh start. He gave me a love of history as my history teacher and my form tutor. And to this day, when people are walking around museums and stuff, I'm the one reading all the information because I'm like, I want to know the story. And he gave me that understanding that history is like this one big, amazing story, which helps us to understand everything that's going on. And so there was him, there was Mr. Clark, who was a legend, Miss Jones, who came in as head teacher, who once kind of sat me down and said, I know you're not in the middle of this problem that's happening at the moment, but I think you can stop it. So if you don't stop it, the worst punishment I give out, you're going to get it as well. And I was like, oh God, all right. And I went to try to solve this problem because I didn't want to get in trouble. But she knew, which I think is great leadership in hindsight, she couldn't stop it, but she needed it to stop. So she made that happen.
And I presume this was antagonism between different groups.
So it was a couple of boys who'd come from Kosovo. And they'd got into a fight where they'd absolutely been in the right, and a couple of the of us lads would give them a load of grief, and they'd beat up a few people, and then was like, we're all gonna beat them up at lunchtime. And she was like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Because A, they weren't in the wrong. You wound them up and you got what was coming to you. And B, we can't have that in school. We can't have a school where it's they're from there and we're from here. We're gonna fight them. And I went to a school with lots of white people, lots of Southeast Asian people, lots of black people, and we never had that. We never had that division. I guess I think that's very much a Nechells thing. Like growing up in Nechells, it was never they're from there or he's from there. We all just came from here. But yeah, there was a moment there where it was like, this could have been a problem. It was like, no, we're not having that problem.
You mentioned that you had some difficult times at school. Do you want to explain that a bit?
So, I mean, part of that is I've got ADHD. I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD till I was 19 years old. So I went all the way through school with ADHD, undiagnosed, and often just getting into problems and dramas. So people say to me, why didn't I do English at degree level? But towards the end of year 10, I got kicked out of English in school. I wasn't allowed to go to English for the whole of year 11. So I passed English, but I scraped to pass. I wasn't allowed to do a higher paper. And that was because 2 weeks in a row, I had an issue with the same teacher, and she ultimately said, that it wasn't enough that I was removed from her lesson. They'd be rewarding me if they put me in somebody else's lesson, so I had to be banned. And the two problems, one kind of doesn't really need speaking about, but one was she'd read a poem called Half Caste by John Agard. And the poem is about why we shouldn't use the term half caste and how problematic it is. And she finished the poem and she looked straight at me and she went, "Was that okay?"
Oh.
And I said, "I don't know. I've never read that effing poem before."
Oh.
But it was like I couldn't understand why she did that or why that happened.
You were the mixed race kid, therefore I'll ask you.
And the thing is, there was quite a few of us. It was, Nechells in the early 2000s, so quite a few of us. But yeah, she just looked straight at me and said, "Well, how was that?" And I was like, I don't know what you're doing here. So I had stuff like that. I was often arguing with teachers, getting into confrontation with teachers. And some of those things, as I've got older and as I've become a teacher, I realised was just me being in the wrong. Some of those things I've realised is like some of the systematic issues in school.
Yes.
Because as a 14-year-old, you couldn't kid me.
No.
I was too smart for someone to say to me, "Oh, that's because of this or that's because of that." And I was too, I guess, fiery or impulsive to just accept that. So I'd say, like, that's a lie.
Yeah.
You're talking,
Yeah.
you're talking, you know what. And people didn't like that. And then I would fight, get really flared up and really angry.
And that's partly a problem that we have a middle class educational system that doesn't recognise the talents and abilities of working class 100%. Kids, which is straitjacketing them into becoming something they're not.
And there's something for me in being a teacher, and I can think of specific kids in my head who I've taught where, as a secondary school teacher, I could potentially teach the greatest mind that this world has ever seen.
Yes.
And at 13 years old, they will be smarter than I am now.
Yeah.
And so we have this kind of thing of like, I'm the teacher, I'm in charge, I know stuff, and you're a child and you don't really know that much.
Yeah.
But we meet kids who know an awful lot. They understand things we don't understand. So my parents raised me to understand stuff that school wouldn't teach me. And I meet kids now who are like, "Well, you say this, but my mum told me that actually that's the narrative that we're told.
Yeah.
But really it's this." And as a historian yourself, you're a prime example of not all of the history that we found in the books is exactly how things go.
That's right.
And there are kids who will say, "Well, I don't believe in that. I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Why should I say that?"
And I think there's a difference there. I'm 69, a lot older than you. We didn't challenge when we were at school. And I think it's become more recognisable for youngsters to challenge, but it's still not seen as acceptable.
Yeah. And I think part of that is, people like my dad and my mum who went to school, who were smart, who got nothing out of school. Now, this isn't true of my own parents, but there are people like that who are like, "I don't value the education system because they kept me in school for 10 years and I walked out with nothing."
Yeah.
So now you're going to now tell my child they have to do this. Like, why? Because Mr. Bailey said. What does Mr. Bailey know about this?
Yeah.
And I'm attuned to that. I'm alive to that fact. And I remember there's a girl I used to teach, one of the smartest people I've ever met. And I said to her, you will, on a day-to-day basis, be taught by people who aren't as smart as you. But they're not going to thank you for telling them.
No, they're
So
not.
it's that balance of how do you play the game? How do you go, "Okay, yes, miss, all right."
Yeah.
And know that you're going to get out of it what you need, and you're going to disappear, and you might not see us again, and that's okay. But like she kind of opened my eyes to the fact that there were teachers who really didn't like her, and she was really hardworking, really dedicated, really smart, all the things you want a student to be. But also, she would tell them when they were wrong. She would question them, and she would say, "Well, you say that, but actually, isn't it this?" And like, "Well, yeah, it is, but that's on the A-level spec. You don't need to know that yet."
That's the problem. It's the spec.
Yeah.
Can I come back to Nechells?
Please.
Yeah. One of my earliest memories is our nan had a house, 7 back of 6, a back-to-back house, White House Street, next to Avenue Road.
Yeah.
And was moved about 62, 63, because my granddad Perry was in a wheelchair with multiple sclerosis, terrible conditions in a back-to-back house. And our nan knew a bloke called Georgie Cannon. He was the shop steward at a factory. He was a counsellor. He managed to get her a brand new masonette on the ground floor with hot water. She'd never had hot water before on tap. An indoor toilet. She'd shared the toilet outside. A proper bath. 2 bedrooms in Rupert Street.
Rupert Street, down the road from where I grew up. And it's interesting, isn't it, when you say it like that, like how far we are on as a society.
Yeah.
All that stuff's like standard. It's like electric windows in cars now.
Yeah.
It used to be a thing, didn't it? Like my car has got electric windows. It's like my house has got a bath.
Yeah.
That was a thing. But when I was first born, I lived in the Masonettes on Cromwell Street, which literally backs onto
our nan's house. We used to lie in bed. We'd go to our nan's in the summer holidays, and we'd go to bed and we'd be looking at all the lights in the high rises just going off slowly.
Yeah. Yeah,
Did you do the same?
Yeah, I used to, and I love those. There's those 3 tower blocks.
Yeah.
7 tower, Medway Tower, Thames Tower.
Yeah.
That to me just feel like home. But it's interesting. I always say that those tower blocks, like originally when they started talking about certain tower blocks, it was like a replacement for back-to-backs.
Yes.
And it was like, oh, you don't want to live in a back-to-back with no garden.
Yeah.
So then they build you up in the sky and put you back-to-back.
And there's no garden.
Back to side to side to back-to-back. Like there's literally nowhere to move. You got a landing and a balcony. But yeah, I love those tower blocks.
And something happened to you as a very young, well, almost a baby.
Yeah.
Come on, tell us about it.
So we lived in the Masonettes on Cromwell Street, and to get me to sleep, my mum used to take the washing out of the tumble dryer. She'd put me in the basket. She'd put me back on the tumble dryer. So we had the warmth of the clothes and the vibration of the tumble dryer was the only thing that could get me to sleep. And then one day she came back in and there were rats in the basket, which partly led to us then moving round the corner to Oliver Street just before my sister was born, which is then where I grew up and where my dad still lives around that way now. So. And
just down the road, well, very close, within a few yards, was the Rupert pub.
Yeah.
Where my granddad used to drink.
Yeah, yes. You had the Rupert pub on that corner, and then we were up by the Oliver Cromwell pub. Yeah, on the corner. So yeah.
Nechells means a lot to you.
It does.
And it does to me in a lesser sense. I didn't live there, but I get very angry at the way that people from outside look at communities like Nechells, and the only time you see them in the press is negative.
Yeah.
That angers you, doesn't it?
It does. And you know what's funny is what really angers me is I know that at times I've perpetuated that. So when I was first kind of writing, I would only write about the negatives of from a place like Nechells. But actually, like, I'm a firm believer that there are horrible people everywhere.
Yes.
Bad things happen everywhere.
Yes.
Often for no reason. Sometimes in places like Nechells for reasons like poverty.
Yeah.
But what I've realised now, having lived in Nechells most of my life, having lived in Worcester, having lived in Sandwell, having lived in Shropshire, having lived all over the place, the sense of community you get in a place like Nechells, you don't find that everywhere.
No.
That doesn't exist everywhere, where people go like, oh, that's Christine's kids. And therefore that means something, and they'll look out for you and say, oh, I don't know your mum. And there'll be trouble or problems, and someone will go, oh, no, that's Jessica's brother. Oh, okay, we need to stop this.
Yeah.
That sense of community, I've only ever felt that in Nechells. And actually, something I realised, there's a poet called Caleb Femi, and he wrote a book called Poor. He's from South London. And looking back and reading it, the amount of joy that is written into this.
Yeah.
And when I as like a early to mid 20s person, like looking back and intellectualizing my childhood, I was quite negative about it. But thinking about how I felt, 15 years old, I was having a whale of a time. I wouldn't have been anywhere else in the world. You couldn't have sold me anywhere else in the world, because this is where my family was. This is where my friends were. This is where people that I loved were. This is where I wanted to be. Whether it was just running around Bloomsbury Park, whether it was jumping off the garages on Rupert Street, like whatever it was, climbing up, they used to have the good conker trees down Rupert Street, climbing up there, get some conkers, get stung by some bees. That was exactly where I wanted to be. And I'm a firm believer that a lot of the people that I know who do great things, not just newsworthy things, or I say newsworthy, not just the things that make the news, but really good community-driven things, they're from Nechells, or they're in Nechells now. So, yeah.
And we must make this point, because somebody lives in an area that's seen as poor and they might be struggling themselves, doesn't make them a criminal.
Doesn't make anything negative about
poverty is a problem with regards to criminality. But look at your mum and dad. They didn't turn to crime.
100%. And furthermore, lots of people who are living with money and doing quite well because they are criminals. In one way or another.
Have you got a poem you could give us?
Yeah. So this poem is called Dear Birmingham.
Yeah.
I think it goes like this. Dear Birmingham. That doesn't even sound right. Yo, Brum. That's the kind of thing that I would write. It's not because you're not dear to me or always here for me, but I have heard your bark, and more than once I felt your bite. So how you keeping? Still having trouble with your sleeping? When I think of you, I think about the long extended evenings, nights that turn to mornings, young brothers snatched from good mothers. I think about the nights that we spent mourning. Think of Charlene Ellis, Letitia Shakespeare, their family pain at the shame, knowing that they ain't here. It's crazy. How quick a mum or dad can lose their baby, Brum, I love you. But at times I truly feel like you've betrayed me, Brum, I love you. And I know I seem focused on your flaws, but I've seen so many die claiming postcodes that are yours. I've no attention to draw attention to funerals I've attended just to mention your malfunction, so one day they may be mended. Sometimes I think you're so sweet. But do you do that to distract me? Man, I never thought a Cadbury would turn out to be so crafty. Surely we could have fought for whole nuts. Brum, ain't we tough enough? Instead, we showed no guts and decided we should button up. And I don't want to sound like a complainer or rant like a moaner, and I realise it's been a long time since Rover, but the drama and the rubble since they built the last bubble means this will be a long bridge for those people to get over. Brum, I love you. And I know this isn't clear from my statements, but as a man, you didn't live up to my boyhood expectation. Still, if they told me to let go, I'd have to tell them no, no, no. Like Amy offered rehabilitation, the home of my relations, birthplace of my dreams, fueling my motivation, stronger than kerosene. They call it the second city. But whenever I spend a second out of the city, I know there's nowhere better I could be. Proud Birmingham son, married one of its daughters, met her in Kings Norton, bought the ring in jewelry quarter. Now I use her like an anchor, my connection to Brum, like the anchor hallmarks that we're pressing in Brum, the home of the innovators, focused on solutions like Matthew Bolton leading industrial revolutions. It's easy to have a vision. Anybody can dream. It's different to reach goals, burn coal, make steam. You ain't seen Brum. If you ain't seen the tower blocks and tried to define where the clouds start and the towers stop, you ain't heard Brum. If you ain't heard the local rave music and seen the wild Brummies misbehave to it, Arcadian, lit up like an arcade treat, where the shots are on offer, high heels on feet, 20-somethings and late teens heading to Broad Street. Before you know it, UB40 sipping red wine in King's Heath. Brums are home to the canals, where I write poetry and think the water's still. Only thing flowing is the ink. I think of horses pulling boats. I know that Brum's engraved upon my soul, like the walls holding scars of old ropes. They'll never kill my love of Brum. So if my passion is their target, tell them bring a ring of balls. Bet you still they couldn't mark it. Like the shadow of the council house mountain or the fountain laying under. Brum, I promise, I will stay around like the rotunda. I don't need 10 letters. You know that ain't me. You know I spell Birmingham, Home. So wherever I may be, I will carry your thoughts with me. Forever yours. Mister, I'm in love with my city. Brum.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
You fill me up with that.
Thank you.
Because you know how much I love.
Yeah.
And I know how much you love that city. For all its faults.
Yeah.
For all its faults, I love these still.
Yeah, 100%.
And there are faults. Let me just go back again to the... As a social historian that's written a lot about gangs, particularly in the later 19th century, the Peaky Blinders, I'm so angry that politicians, national and local, don't take on board, not the exact lessons from the past, but pointers that deprivation is a problem. That some young men are drawn into crime because of poverty. Not all, but some. That we need youth clubs.
100%.
We're in a city now where they're closing down youth centres. What kept you away from the postcode gangs? Because that was starting in the 80s and 90s, wasn't it? I
mean, if I'm honest, you know, I didn't always stay away from it. I was around it. I engaged with it. I was involved with it. I think I was lucky in many senses that I had people around me who looked out for me. Some of them were involved in gangs and would say to me, you don't want to be involved in this. I had times where, you know, when I was 17, I was stabbed multiple times and I fell into a cycle of negativity and getting involved with that kind of lifestyle. But I think it's a really weird thing to think of when I was at the age where I was probably about 18 years old. The people that were around me that were involved in gangs, all of the ways that they were making their money were things I couldn't really... I didn't really want to... I had no problem with the idea of going out and having a fight with them because they're from there. That was kind of okay in my head. But I wasn't going to sell anybody drugs.
No.
I wasn't going to rob anybody of anything that their parents worked very hard to get for them. And I remember having a conversation with my friend. I was in my third year of A-levels, looking at universities, and my friend says to me, what are you going to be? You're going to be a gang member and a doctor? Right. You're going to come out the GP service at the end of the day and get your hoodie on and come out and hang around with us. It doesn't make any sense.
Powerful words.
And I was like, that seems like a flawed plan. And so I took myself, when I went to college, I went from Nechells to Kings Norton. Everyone where I was from was going to college quite local. They were getting involved. College was becoming a breeding ground for gangs. And I took myself off as far as I could, 2 trains away. So I wasn't in and around it every day. And then when I went off to university, I took myself out of the city after university. And I lied to most of my friends about where I was going to university. So I told all my friends I was going to Derby, but I went to Worcester because I'd been accepted at both. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm in Derby. Don't know why I told them that, like anyone was going to travel that far. And I remember coming home from university at Christmas of my first year and seeing a load of the people who I would like normally be around. And they're like, where have you been? Where have you been? I was like, oh, I've been at university. And I'm like, oh yeah, university, because they thought I'd been in jail. I'm like, no, I've actually
been to university.
And they're like, yeah, university, oh yeah.
Wink, nod,
And I
nod.
was like, nope, actually reading books. But so I skirted very close to it. I definitely engage with it at times. But I think, this goes back to what I said about my dad and some of the things that he said. Like, things landed at the right time for me. So I remember being in a situation where all of my friends wanted to go to a place where I knew there was going to be trouble. And I said to them, look, man, my dad used to say to me, you have to balance. What do you get if you go there? What's the positive and what's the potential negative? Now, there's 1% chance that something really bad will happen, but it's really, really bad. The 99% chance is just another night out. Like you could miss it and not care. And I didn't go. And somebody I know very well got shot there. And I was like, this is why I didn't want to go to that place. And so over time, those little gems dropped and landed. And I also was fortunate enough to realize, like I always say now, some of the hardest and the most dangerous people I've ever met, if they were raised in Solihull, they'd go down the pub, they'd have a drink. People go, oh, Dave's having a drink. You know what he's like. He'd hit someone, he'd go home, no one will care. They come back next week, you go, oh, sorry, lads. But if you like that and you're raised in Nechells, Aston, Handsworth, and people see you fight like that, they go, oh, we want him to be with us. Yeah. Now you get roped into a very negative crowd because it's not the same. Yeah. And very next thing you know, that's the person with the gun who's shooting people, because that happens there and it doesn't happen elsewhere. And so sometimes, the same people with proximity to different things will make very different choices.
You mentioned you were stabbed. Yeah. Can we talk about that?
Absolutely, yeah.
What happened?
So it's a weird situation in that I was out with some friends of mine, and there'd been an argument, and it was people from where I was from and people from another part of Birmingham. But the argument had happened around a girl. Yeah. Argument over a girl, and my friend was there and he wanted to fight this guy, and I was like, we're not doing that. We're not here for that. And it all kind of dissipated. And then later on in the night, that guy came back and had a lot more of his friends with him, and he was like, I want to have that fight now. And I was like, no, we're definitely not doing that now. And long story short, that became an argument. I was kind of in the process of trying to diffuse it. Yeah. Something that I've realized, I guess, in time is that, like, at that time, and for, in my opinion, through no fault of the people that were there, on any side of it, like, people showed up and they wanted violence. Yeah. They didn't want a negotiation. No. They didn't want.
Once he came back with his mates, you knew.
That's what they wanted. And and on my side, there were people who wanted that as well, who had to get in the middle of and say, no, this isn't it. So it wasn't like, they were bad and we were good or anything like that. And one of the things that over time I've come to realize is, the person who did that to me was a boy just like me, growing up in an area just like the area I grew up in, had probably seen all the kind of problems I'd seen. And I believe that at 17, 18 years old, if I meet a kid, there's nothing that they've done that they can't redeem themselves from. There's nothing that they can't turn around. So when I think about that person, that was really my test of, like, what does forgiveness look like? Because I want nothing but the best for that person. Yeah, good for you. When you grow up how we grew up, bad stuff happens. Sometimes to you, sometimes because of you, sometimes you're just around it. And I'm sure that there's people I've hurt in my life, there's people I've caused harm to. And I think a lot of those things are because I made choices that I had to make in a less than ideal situation. And I think he made choices he had to make in a less than ideal situation.
So you're trying to diffuse it, but he's gone for you?
Yeah. Well, so ultimately, yes, but it was like, the comment was made and I'd kind of like tried to laugh it off. I'm kind of thinking now, maybe we're at a good point here. And I've kind of tried to laugh it off and like, oh yeah, it's all going well. And somebody said, is he being cheeky? And I was
yeah.
And next thing you know, I was stabbed in my back and in my leg and in my backside.
You were lucky.
Very. So when I got to the hospital, they told me that the stab wound in my back was quite close to being in my spine, which would have been very problematic. And the stab wound in my backside was very close to my femoral artery, less than a half inch from my femoral artery. And I ended up going away from the situation. I called the ambulance myself. because I realised I'd been stabbed. I didn't know at the time because I was getting beaten up by a lot of people at the time. So I walked off down the road, realised I'd been stabbed. And when they picked me up, the woman in the ambulance said that she was telling this story. I don't know why she was telling this story. And it was about someone who, like, I'd vaguely crossed paths with in my area, who had been shot and had got all the way to the hospital. And when he walked into the hospital, he dropped down and died. And so when the nurse actually did my stitches and all that, she said, I don't think you realise how close you are to not being here. And I was like, I didn't know what to do with that at the time. I was like, I don't know what to say.
Tell me about your mum and dad's reaction.
Yeah, so I think my mum and dad, and this was something that they did very well as parents, they kind of sheltered me from their reaction. So it was years later when, I think it might have been one of my sisters who said, you realise, like, dad got like 1 million fines for running red lights on the way to the hospital that night, and I never knew that. And stuff like that. But I think it was weird because at the time my brother had been in a bit of trouble. He was a bit older than me. He was considerably tougher, stronger, angrier than I was at the time. And we kind of, I think in my family there was, if that had happened to him, which it did as well at a different time, people would have been like, they kind of expect that, which sounds really bad and harsh on my brother, which is not how I mean it. I think it was less expected of me. But so then there was a period of time where they were quite protective and quite like trying to manage me a lot. But I mean, ultimately they, again, as I say, I think it's really weird that where I grew up and how I grew up, it wasn't a surprise to me that could happen to me.
No.
But yeah, there was a lot of there was some emotional times in the house around that time.
With all that hindsight, all that knowledge, the understanding of growing up on the street, but having a really good family that are trying to pull you in a different direction. How do we address that problem today of knife crime and postcode gangs?
I really think it comes back down to what you said earlier. I think the root is so far away from the work that we're doing. So I often talk to young people about knife crime, and I talk to people about these kind of problems. But the reality is, it's so far removed from what we see on the street. It is youth clubs shutting down. It is Fresh Start Centre shutting down. It is just poverty and the absolute ignoring of poverty and the dangers of it. I remember I was doing some work in a prison in Milton Keynes with some like young men, so 16 to 21-year-olds, and they'd had a session with a woman whose son had been killed, and there was a boy in there for possession of a knife. And I said to him, "Do you think what you heard today will change how you see things?" And it chills me to my core. Never forget what he said. He says, "No, because somebody's mum's going to be in here talking about their dead son, and it's not going to be my mum." And so to him, it's like, I'd rather be the person killing someone than the person being killed. And that, what it showed to me is like, to him, it's inevitable that someone's going to get killed. So his job is to make sure it's not him. And because of the impact of poverty and the impact of neglect of people and the flip side is where I guess we're in a worse situation now is those are the people from inner city Birmingham, inner city London, inner city Manchester, who then decided they're going to make music about it and talk about it. So now you've got a whole additional layer of people from, I've taught in Shropshire, and the kids are talking like they're gangsters and blah, 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 because that's now glamorous more than it ever has been. And I don't blame a kid from I don't blame a kid who grew up in Peckham, whose brother got killed and whose mum hasn't got any money, who went down this route and is now making music and actually making a living for themselves, talking about the reality of their existence. People go, well, you shouldn't be talking about that. You shouldn't be living like it.
No.
But nobody wanted to do anything about him living like it. Now that he's saying it, everybody wants to.
And this is something that my own work with the Peaky Blinders and the slogging gangs has been to show that gangsterism is not glamorous. It's harsh, it's brutal.
It's horrendous, But when you've got, and this again comes back to the education system, and again is political, when you've got kids who go to school and from 11 years old, they've never passed a test. They're not going to get their GCSEs. They feel just squeezed out by the system. And they've got nothing to lose in the confines of everything we're telling them they're meant to do. This is how life's meant to go, but you can't do it. You're not going to get the grades. You're not going to go off to college. You're not going to go off to university. You're not going to get this job. But that guy over there, he's selling drugs and he's doing all right for himself.
So he's my role
So you
model
go,
now.
well, I could do that.
Yeah.
That's achievable.
I'm a fighter. I could do that.
I'm good with my hands. I can beat somebody up wicked. And until we have like a system that says to a kid that maybe Shakespeare isn't your bag, but actually, you see those skills you have, you could build this, you can make that, and that's worthy.
Valuing working class manual skills.
Qualifications in it. You can do well. You're great with people. You can do this. You can do that. Until we have a system that tells them that, and more over the last 15 years of government, it's gone, you need to learn a foreign language. You need to be able to do geography or history. You need to do this. And it's like squeeze. And now you've got people, I can't do any of that.
Yeah.
But there's a guy on YouTube who's got 50 million views with a big Rolex on saying, I'm just going to talk about stabbing people.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll talk about stabbing people as well.
When I was at in the university job, my colleagues didn't like it when I said I wasn't a professional, that I was a skilled man. Because for me, what makes my skill better than my wife who's a hairdresser or a plumber or an electrician? We're all skilled. And what we should be aiming for is for all of our youngsters to be able to achieve a skill.
100%, absolutely. And so I think that, so for me, when we look at what the solution is, it just goes far beyond the kid that we actually see standing on the corner. It goes beyond his parents. It goes beyond his grandparents. It's, are we going to fund? And the reality is, getting super political. In a world where we spend how much money on nuclear weapons, but we got kids living in poverty. This is it. This is the outcome of choices.
Yeah.
And if we don't make different choices, we're going to keep getting the same outcomes.
So you've managed to stay on at Duddeston Mount Arrow, I was going to call it, but Heartlands High, as it became. You're doing A-levels.
Yeah.
Now, history was one of them, wasn't it?
I didn't do A-level history. I kind of wish I did, but although it's a lot of work. So I did A-levels in chemistry, biology, PE and psychology.
Right.
Yeah.
Your mum and dad must have been really supportive.
They were. And, I think, I remember having a discussion with my mum about where I was going to go to college, and she didn't want me to go there because it was far. And I was a little bit of a loose cannon at 16 years old. So I wanted to ride my bike there. My dad said, you're not riding your bike there, you'll get run over, I know what you're like. And but I said to my mum, I don't want to go to, I'm not going to name the colleges because it's not fair to them.
Don't.
But there were local colleges where I knew someone who went there and everyone, me and such go there and we do this. And I was like, this is not where you want me to go to college. And so she says, well, crack on, go. And I used to get 2 trains. And it was, I love Cadbury College. I wouldn't say a bad word about it. I nearly got kicked out, but that was my fault, not theirs. But yeah, my parents were very supportive of whatever I wanted to do that was positive, basically.
Let's just talk for a moment about the problems sometimes with masculinity. Because what a lot of you have said is struck a chord with me. I grew up better off. Both sides of my families were fighting men and women. And I was always the negotiator if there was a bit of trouble at the disco or whatever.
Yeah.
And I always thought, well, I've got to prove myself. I've got to prove myself. I had a few close shaves, was on the edge in the 70s with getting involved in football violence like you, managed to pull away.
Yeah.
And was rollicked by mum and dad for getting too close. But there is a thing when you're from similar backgrounds like us that you want to prove yourself as a tough man.
Yeah. I think in many ways I'm really lucky. So I've 100% had that problem. And there's been lots of times in my life where I've kind of played up to it or just naturally have reacted to a situation based on the fact that I've been around a lot of violence and experienced a lot of that. I guess my something which has saved me, I've never said this to either of them to their face, but my brothers, both considerably harder than I am. And I always this is something that keeps me out of trouble. It's a funny thing, where not so much anymore because I don't get anywhere near trouble these days. But say when I was mid-20s, there'd be a problem unfolding and I would see someone and it looks like there's going to be a problem. And I think, that could be my brother.
Yeah.
And if I had to try and fight my brother right now, it'd be a very short fight.
Yeah.
It'd be a very short fight. And I wouldn't look very pretty at the end of it because I don't know who any of these people are.
No.
So if you put me and my two brothers in a room, any one of us could be a fighter and any one of us could be soft as anything.
Yes.
But you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know until you upset one of us and you go, oh, he's pretty hard. So I realised I don't know who's out there.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're here for, what they're doing. And my dad used to say, as I always say, there's no medals. No one's going to give you a championship bout.
No.
No one's going to pay you any money. If you win the fight, you just win the fight. And when I became a teacher, I've always said since 21, 22 years old, qualified to be a teacher, if I fight, I lose, even if I win. Because if I beat somebody up today and get arrested, then that's my career.
Your career's gone.
Career down the drain. For what? Because I'm stronger than Bob down the road. There's literally zero value in winning a fight unless you're in a ring and someone's throwing some money at you. And I don't want to get in a ring and fight anybody either. So
how do we address that problem, which it is a problem, that both of us have got good educations, but we still have that kind of feeling about kind of prove ourselves as fighting men. How do we stop that earlier on to show young men in tough neighbourhoods they don't have to be fighters, as masculinity can be something else?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this is, so there are a lot of people doing, I think, very well-intentioned work around this, but I don't necessarily agree with their work because there are a lot of people who are kind of like, they're pushing for anti-knife crime, but they want to resolve it with boxing or fighting. Or the reality is, to me, there just has to be a clear step away from violence. Violence has never solved anything. And people don't like to say that. And it's like, oh, wow, if you want to be an alpha male, if you want to be a real man, you have to be dangerous. And all this. I don't believe in it in the slightest. I believe that what we need to do is, I think there's two aspects to it. One is we need to make it clear to boys that there's no glory in going out and having a fight.
I agree.
You literally get nothing from it. And if you talk to most men who have lived a life around violence, who are 35, 45, 50, they'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Oh, Bobby used to be the hardest guy. And you talk to him and he'll go, oh, you know, my hip hurts and my fists are a bit messed up and nobody likes me and I feel awkward. And those people are never like, yeah, I used to batter people. That's not how it goes. But the flip side is, there's a thing about respect because my brother would often like rough me up a bit in the house because I was quite quick-witted. My brother, I think, is smarter than I am, but wasn't necessarily as quick as I am. And it'd frustrate him.
Yes.
And he'd be like, you know what, you're a cheeky.
Yeah, I'm going to show you.
Right, who are you talking to?
Yeah.
And sometimes there are people who are not violent people, but they're smart and they think they can talk down to people because they're smarter than them. And then those people go, right, my only recourse now is to punch you.
Yeah.
Because you're embarrassing me or you're upsetting me, you're not respecting me. So the only way I can make you respect me is through this physical.
And in a society that for centuries has not respected working class men, and if you're poor, sometimes as a man, and I'm not excusing it, but it's a reality, the only way I can show I'm a proud man is by being the toughest man.
Yep. And that's, so we need to, there's a mutual respect between someone who could beat me up, not beating me up, and somebody who I could outsmart and make look like a fool. And I'm not supposed to make them look like a fool either.
Can we have another poem?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. So this poem's called Multiple Choice, and it deals with suicide and some of the stigma around suicide. Find a new place to hang this noose. Stop killing those who have already killed themselves, like they haven't suffered enough already, carried enough already, died enough already. To label somebody a coward when they are no longer here to represent themselves has to be the worst cocktail of cowardice and hypocrisy that I have ever tasted. Maybe he did it because he saw no hope in this life. Maybe they did it because their only hope is that another life would follow. I always thought the most difficult multiple choice questions are the ones where you feel like all of the answers could be right. Gravity is pulling us all down. And just because bricks fall faster than feathers, it doesn't mean they're weaker. They just carry more weight. A man who looked young but aged, with a face like distressed furniture, once told me that the greatest misconception around suicidal people is the thought that they want to die. Nobody wants to die. The issue is not everybody wants to live either. The most difficult multiple choice questions are not the ones where we feel like all of the answers could be right. The most difficult multiple choice questions are the ones where you are sure that none of the answers are right. And then you have to choose one anyway.
That's powerful. What led to that poem?
People that I know, unfortunately, taking their own life.
And we need to just emphasise here that whilst we've been talking about violence, one of the worst examples of violence for working class young men is suicide.
Yeah. And that's unfortunately something I've seen quite close up, and so that's led to the writing of that piece.
Is that through a lack of hope?
I think so. I think most people have elements of their life that they're not happy about, that they want to see change, and for some people, they can only see the things that they're not happy with, and they can't see a realistic route to what they want. How
does young Casey then go from college at Cadbury College to university?
I followed the girl. She was pretty. So my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, was going off to Worcester University to study art. And my teachers, there's a powerful thing about going to the college that I did. They always spoke about when you go to university. So like my chemistry teacher, Dr. Smith, was like, when you go to university, you'll do this. And I remember actually my secondary school chemistry teacher, Mr. Clifford, saying, when you do A-level chemistry, you'll learn about this. And people talk to you about when you do this, when you do that, when you go to university. So I had this weird double life of whenever I wasn't at college, I was just out and about, just wreaking havoc, causing trouble. But whenever I was at college, it was like, when you go to uni, when you finish your UCAS application, when you do your student loan application, then everyone was just talking to me like it was inevitable that I would go to university. And I often, when I work with, when I coach football in the inner city, when I work with kids who don't see themselves going to either university or apprenticeship or doing more, I always talk to them about when you're doing your apprenticeship and when you've got that job and when you're a carpenter and when you're a doctor, when you're a lawyer, whatever it is. Because if you say if, it just leaves that room for doubt. I had no doubt I was going to university, even though I had no idea what I was going to do. And I went off to university and didn't know what I was doing. So literally 6 weeks into the course I was doing, realised what the course was. I was like, oh.
And what was it?
So I did a joint honours degree in sports studies and physical education.
Yes.
Which I thought was just like GCSE or A-level sport, where you learn about sociology of sport and psychology of sport, etc. And I remember it was about 6-7 weeks in, and my lecturer says, in about 4 weeks, we've got the kids coming in from the local primary school, and you're going to teach them these like core games things. And I was like, stopped to the end of the lecture. I was like, I don't want to teach the kids from the local primary school. She was like, that's part of the course. I was like, but this isn't what I want to do. And she's like, but you're doing a physical education degree. I says, I know what I'm doing. I know what course I'm doing, but I don't want to do that. She says, I don't think you do know what course you're doing. And it turned out I was doing a degree to train to be a teacher, but I didn't even realise that was the degree I'd taken. I just followed the girl.
Now,
it's turned out all right to me.
So your wife's name?
Kerry.
How important has she been to your life?
Whole different life. I can't imagine what my life would be without her. Genuinely. I don't want to imagine what my life would be without her. She and my wife is, again, proper working class background, kind of between Bartley Green as a kid and over to Billesley as a little bit older, but had, due to her family situation, has kind of always lived very much in poverty and very much from a background of scraping to make things happen. And her dad is someone who basically did everything that he could to make things happen for his girls, and in my opinion is a hero as well, and now does everything he can for my boys, which is always lovely. But she, if you looked at me and my wife when we met at 16, 17 years old, our prospects were zero. You wouldn't have thought either one of us was going to do anything worth doing. My wife is an amazing teacher. She's a department leader for art in her school, and consistently does everything she can for those kids to do everything they can, because she understands the value that her education in art had for her. And between us, we've modelled together and then managed to build out this life which we're happy with, and it's good for our kids.
So Kerry,
yeah,
she from Bartley Green, big white working class area. What similarities do you see between a white working class area that's facing deprivation, a South Asian area that's facing deprivation, a black area that's facing deprivation, or a mixed area that's facing deprivation?
I think for me, the biggest thing is, and this is something that we've kind of both experienced in different ways, is there is a weird way that your own community and people look at you when you want to do something.
Yes.
So we get so entrenched in the idea that, this is who we are and we don't have much, that the idea that somebody could feels like a bit of an affront to your own identity.
Yeah.
So I've seen, in all of those types of communities, the situation where the son wants to travel the world, and it's like, you think you're better than us, you're going to go over there and do you? No, I say that for my wonderful brother who's living in Australia. I've seen the situations where the daughter wants to go off to university. What do you mean you want to go off to university? You don't go to university. You get a job down there, and so anything that feels outside of what we're used to feels like an attack on who we are. And then from the outside, it doesn't matter. With all that ambition and all that hope, you get outside and you're them again. It's the kid from Nechells again. So you can very quickly be like an alien everywhere, because at home people are not necessarily used to aspiration. Some people are very aspirant and they want to do loads of things. Some people are a bit like, he thinks he's nice, he does, because he's written a book.
It's defensive, isn't it?
Yeah, because they're so used to being judged by people from the outside.
Yes.
That if somebody starts to look like that, they start to go, are you going to start to look at us like they look at us?
Yeah.
And then you get outside of Nechells and they look at you like, oh, go back to Nechells.
Yeah.
It's like, it's easy to feel kind of like attacked on all corners. But I think what I think is also very evident though, and I've only realised this since moving out, is I think that people from working class backgrounds are the most ambitious people. Not everyone, because you can't say everyone's the same in any class group, race group, gender, whatever. But I've now met students who are from a relatively affluent background, and things are going well for them. They don't care how school goes, not bothered. They're going to be fine, because they might live in a council house in an area that somebody from Nechells worked all their life to buy a house next door to. Whereas when I've worked within the inner city, people see, I say this coming from a teacher's point of view, people see their education or their skills as a route to a different life, and a life where they can be more comfortable and feel less like they're chasing and scratching and scraping.
And I wish we could just transform things so that people don't feel that they have to leave who they are. They don't have to move from their districts. We should be improving the district 100%. So people can stay local.
This is why, there's a guy called John Street from, I don't think he's from Nechells actually, but I've always known him as being from Nechells since I was a kid. And he runs an organisation called Free at Last. When I was maybe 13 years old, Free at Last was a bus. The bus used to pull up in Nechells. You'd get on the bus, you'd do DJing, MCing, you play board games. It was like a youth club, but it just pulled up on a bus. Now Free at Last is this massive youth centre in Nechells. They've got one of the biggest climbing walls in the region, and they've got a studio. They've got kids run businesses from there, so they make things and sell them from there. And John, said to me when I was quite young, actually roundabout when I was going off to university, he couldn't just tell people from Nechells that they could be anything whilst he was travelling into Nechells. He lived in Nechells, he raised his children in Nechells, who've gone on to do whatever they wanted to do. And he said, I'm going to do it from the middle of this community. He lives around the corner from the youth centre. And so that idea is something I believe in. And I weirdly, I say this and people will say to me, well, why don't you live in Nechells? Unfortunately, because of the dramas I got myself into as a kid, there was a period of time where I had to be out of where I grew up, because I didn't want to repeat and go through the cycle of stuff that I'd been through. But when I look at someone like John Street, he is the epitome of, he came into the area, he told everybody in the area you could do great coming from the area. He told me it. He's one of the reasons I believe it. And then he stayed in there and he proved it. And it's just, so what Free at Last do and what John does, just amazing.
And what a
inspirational.
Name. Martin Luther King.
And that's where it comes from, Free at Last.
Free at Last.
Free at last. Free. See, you picked that up straight away. John had to point that out to me many years after I first said it.
It's one of the greatest speeches
Yeah.
in history.
Free at last.
When he
Free at
stood
last.
there, filling up, thinking of, I'm free at last, shouting out to black people, one day we will be free.
Free at last, yeah. And John Street is a white man in Nechells, telling often black boys, black girls, Asian boys, Asian girls, white boys, white girls, people from everywhere, free at last. You'll be free at last. So,
what's next for you? You're teaching, obviously, now. You're still performing?
Yep, always. Yeah.
Tell me a bit about the performances.
So I make music and I write poetry. So I've had a little resurgence around my music recently, around managing to perform. I did a headline show at Symphony Hall this year, which was amazing. And so I'm just kind of, to be honest, the music is something that I enjoy, something I'm passionate about. I have no belief it's going to do anything for me other than fulfill me. But you know what? That's quite a lot. So I'm still doing that. My poetry. I'm working now on a new collection of poetry, which, you know, fingers crossed I'll get to the end of it somehow. And then I've been writing theatre. So my play, Please Do Not Touch, went on at the Belgrade in 2024.
Brilliant.
And starts a national tour in January 2026. So it'll be up and down the country, and I'm kind of eyes on that.
What kind of music?
I make grime music, I make hip hop music. Being very particular sonically, sometimes I make music that would be drill music, but it doesn't have the message of drill music.
Just explain what you mean by grime and drill.
So weirdly, grime and drill. So drill technically sits at around about 70 beats per minute or 140 beats per minute if it's double time. And it's got like a very swampy, bassy kind of sound to it, and you rap over it. Grime music sits at 140 beats per minute, pretty much quite tightly. It's faster in terms of how you perform over it. And grime is very much like a UK art form. So
very much Birmingham as well, isn't it?
Birmingham's had a very heavy influence on grime. And so, gosh, I can't remember where we are in time. Last year, I wrote a book called Legacy. I wrote it with artist manager called Jess Monroe. So Jess Monroe did a load of interviews, and I wrote the chapters of a book which deals with 2000 to 2020 in the Birmingham grime and hip hop scene, which we're very proud of, because you know that captures the spirit of the city that I grew up in, I guess.
Now, drill is mostly associated with a lot of. Would I be correct in saying this, with violence?
Yeah, that's fair to say. Yeah, there's a lot of drill music has come out of, and in different sounds, but originally came out of like the Chicago issues around gang violence in Chicago. It became a very strong representation of that community. The sound kind of changed, but the spirit stayed the same. Very much in London, of it started very much as an art form where it would be people talking directly about incidents that happened on the street, and this thing happened to that person, and this person did that. And that was really the kind of birthplace of drill in this.
So your own drill music, is that an attempt to show a non-violent side?
Yeah, I think for me, so a lot of the stuff that I rap about is like the antithesis of like what you normally hear about music. So I'm still talking about the problems of poverty and violence and all this stuff, but I'm very strongly against those problems and talking about hope and talking about doing more. But there's no point in me writing a 10,000 word essay on why the young man down the road shouldn't shoot someone, because the young man down the road is never going to read it. So I want to pull it in a way that sits alongside the exact same thing that tells him he should do it. So we could hear that song and hear my song side by side, and musically they don't sound any different, but the message is very different. So I'm trying to reach people where they are.
You've also been very involved in Continental FC.
Yeah, Continental Star.
Tell people who they are, what they do.
So Continental Star is a football club or family club, as we say, based in Birmingham, based in kind of Perry Bar, essentially now. And I started coaching at Continental because my very good friend Daniel Moses was coaching there. And we coached a team from under 12s up to under 19s. And they're boys from Aston, Handsworth, Newtown, Lascelles, Nechells, areas where a lot of those young men were going to grow up around violence, gangs, drugs, all that kind of stuff that people think epitomizes the whole of those places. And when I think about Continental Star, I think about, there's a young man I used to coach called Jedi Campbell, who's now at the Birmingham City Foundation, and does amazing work in the community and has a massive positive impact in the community. And like, I look at stories like Jedi's and I think, you know, maybe Jedi was always going to be that person, but I feel like the chance that we had to coach him, to mentor him, to work with him, has shown him you can do that for other people as well. And now he goes on and he has that massive impact himself. So when I was 18 years old, I played for Continental Star under 19s. Not very well, but there we are.
And we need to mention Lincoln Moses.
Lincoln Moses, yeah. So Lincoln Moses is the, I mean, I guess technically his title is like the general manager of Continental Star. And Lincoln is the person who kind of has spearheaded that club for as long as I've known it. So you're talking 20 years and before. We took kids to Germany on international outreach programs. We have taken kids up and down the country. So I kind of, maybe 10 years ago, stopped actively coaching at Stars, mainly just because of my own commitments to everything else in my life. But I always kind of consider myself as an ambassador of the club. The club does great work consistently, and a lot of people's lives are better because of it.
Casey, it's been I'm not going to say a pleasure. It's been more than that. It's been enlightening. It's been uplifting. One day, with God's grace, we will slay the demon of poverty.
Indeed.
One day, with God's grace, every child, irrespective of their colour, their creed, their class, will have opportunities. And thanks to you, a younger generation of young people can see a positive role model.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate it.
Can you finish us off with one more poem?
Oh, do I know anything off the top of my head? Don't want to do anything sad either. I've got a lot of sad poems. So after I wrote Dear Birmingham, which I did earlier, years later I wrote Dear Brum, which is like a follow-on, I suppose. So I could do that. Dear Brum, of course I'm here writing you again. The marrow in my bones, the fire in my pen, you are the music in my accent. The reason that I sing, place like the main attraction, the middle of everything. It's so appropriate that we sit in the center of the land, the place that so many can reach, but few can understand. You have to really breathe it in. Walk amongst these people in this so-called second city. We are more than just a sequel. Original in every way. The light that never fades and the games have come and gone, but my city doesn't play, so let the flags stream through. But we've had a preview in a city that is home to so many day to day. It hasn't always done us proud. Home of Enoch's speeches, rivers couldn't wash the blood. You can't dust or clean it, its legacy lives on. And we've definitely moved on, but life is not always a beach in the city of no beaches. We've had our dark Sundays, but Monday brings dawn, so we survived the Black Sabbath where Ozzy was born. Iommi, Ward and Butler making every song special. Down the road from Iron Bridge, we were forging heavy metal. Where Roland Hill invented stamps, where JK makes grime, a place with so much heritage, but somehow in its prime. Just look at Chamberlain Square, clock tower rising in the air, and you don't even have to stare for you to see it's our time. Time is precious, with the beauty and the pain that it delivers. Glass buildings rise around me, I'm reflecting in these mirrors. When I think of what I've lost in this city, I get shivers. But if I'm the town hall roof, then the city is its pillars. The expertise at the QE could not be overstated if you understand it. There's a reason why Birmingham's a place where Malala landed. When she arrived, her life was on the edge, let's not understate it. Fought for girls' education, then in Edgbaston she was educated, proud. That's the way my city makes me feel. Loud about achievements that you won't believe are real. Clouds can hammer us with rain and make the river swell, but the storm is water off the docks back on these Brum canals. I am Leon Priestnall's words. Jamelia superstar. There's an Anatomic's fox spray painted on my heart. The art, just like the people round here, will always be eclectic. Putting on a show for years, go and check at The Electric. Respect it. The special kind of story that we write, give it credit. And that's why the order is Stephen Knight, keep racing. It's just another lap of Alexander Stadium. Go for gold on a podium. Be bold. Be Birmingham. Thank you.
I want to say Your mum must be looking down and saying, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Your dad, please give him my regards. Tell him he's brought up a fine son.
Thank you.
Not only a fine son of his family, a fine son of Birmingham.
Thank you so much.
And may I wish you God's blessings.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Carl. And you.